So, ladies and gentlemen, esteemed members of the Ton, season 4 of Bridgerton is upon us, and I am simultaneously excited and scared, okay? This season is going to be between Sophie and Benedict is one of my favorite Bridgerton brothers, so I'm actually super excited about this one. I have also read the book, in which I will be making a video about that very, very soon, but I wanted to take the time to analyze Benedict, because I feel like with last year's season with Penelope and Colin, I do feel like Colin, I didn't take the time to really analyze who he was, and in hindsight, rewatching the show, I recognize that there's little bits and pieces that I missed about him. And so this time I wanted to take the time to really analyze who Benedict is and what is reasonable to expect and what is not reasonable to expect. So considering the fact that I've read the book, I'm not gonna lie, book Benedict is not my favorite, y'all. Book Benedict really got on my last nerve. Like book Colin got on my last nerve, but book Benedict, if I catch you like a rat on the highway,
when you catch me like a rat on the highway.
Girl, please. I feel like for me personally, Benedict has a lot more personality to me than some of the other boys do. And I feel like with Sophie, that personality would come out more. But that's what I wanted to analyze today. So strap yourselves in, y'all. Let's have a discussion about Benedict Bridgerton and let's hyperanalyze him because I want to. So let's start with Benedict as a person, right? Benedict is a very interesting character to me because even though his story has been fairly overshadowed by his other siblings, he is still a fascinating mix of like just emotional depth, ambition, and charm. I do sometimes feel like he's the comedic relief in the family a little bit. If you look at little scenes, you notice that he sometimes provides comedic relief. And what I do admire is that even though in the world of Bridgerton, men have all the pleasures and all the abilities and all the privileges, you see that he's still very much struggling to find his own identity and his own independence within his family and finding love like on his own terms, which I really do like, despite all the privileges that all the boys have been given, but that's besides the point. So let's start with his personality, right? He is the second son, and since Anthony is the firstborn, Benedict, I do feel, is allowed to be more independent or have a more independent streak than Anthony because he's not riddled with the fact that he has to take care of the family and make sure the family's okay. So as a result, he has less pressure than Anthony does at the viscountcy, or however you pronounce it, and that allows him to explore his own interests and gives him more freedom to his personality. One thing I don't think we talk about enough is the fact that Benedict is very much his family's support in a different way because he is the second brother. He's kind of the addition to Anthony. When Anthony wants to have a duel in season 1, who does he call? Benedict, the second brother, and he immediately puts all that responsibility in case he dies. I find it interesting that he didn't call Colin, but he immediately trusts Benedict. And I think in that sense, while Anthony carries all the broodingness and the responsibility and the eldest child responsibility, Benedict doesn't really have that kind of pressure, but as a result, he does kind of temper Anthony and they work really well together. And I think it's, besides that, one of the reasons that Anthony does try and get him into art school, even though that does disappoint Benedict later down the line because Benedict thought he got in through his own merit. I think Anthony recognizes that his brother is able to have the independence and the life that he wants versus Anthony, who doesn't get that freedom and he has to then take in responsibility since he was young. Benedict is very much a support system within the family, and I do think that his relationship with Eloise also quite shows that and how close that they are. Eloise herself is very much somebody that is outside the family structure. She has alternative opinions, and whereas Anthony might shut that down, Benedict is the only one who truly understands her. I mean, they even smoke outside together. Like they are very, very close. They're very much the outcast in that regard in their family, and I think that shows not only a bit of Benedict's personality, but also him and Eloise's bond, which I think is super cute. It's also important to know that Colin is quite close to Benedict, and this is what I mean by he is his family's support system, especially as the second oldest brother, because Anthony is very busy. I noticed that the other siblings do definitely sort of lean on Benedict a little bit to have more emotional discussions because he's more free and that he's more relaxed and that he's more easygoing. In season 2, when Benedict and Eloise are talking and he suspects that she might be Lady Whistledown, I find it interesting that the first few words that he says is that he actually admires her. It's very interesting because very few people actually mention that they admire Whistledown rather than just hate her for all the gossip that she spread around the town. That is something to note here. In a lot of his relationships with women, Benedict seems to admire the woman that he is with. Unlike Anthony, who sort of puts his first mistress aside and hides her, or like Colin, who sort of gets in a little bit in his feelings when it comes to his writing versus the fact that Penelope is Lady Whistledown, Benedict shows a lot of admiration for the woman in his life, which is also something I really do like about him. Something that's one of the reasons I do kind of root for him is because simply that he's able to connect with his sister so well. And one thing that you do notice about him is not only being an artist, but also he's one of the more free-thinking Bridgertons, in my personal opinion. A lot of the times when you see Benedict in the Ton or in the circles, he's very much not there mentally. He's either yearning for something or he finds himself very bored. Even though he is very charming himself, like he will charm the ladies, a lot of the times it does look like he's super bored. He just doesn't want to be there, which is completely fair. Benedict, being an artist, wants to turn his artistic hobby into a full-fledged career, but as we've seen with another Bridgerton brother, that they are very scared to chase their own dreams, a la Colin with his writing dreams. That's besides the point. And so a lot of the times Benedict ends up in situations in which are very much outside of what is deemed normal for the society and for the Ton, and even outside of what his brothers have done. Like his brothers have been able to have affairs and relationships, but they still kind of keep things within the Ton. But Benedict himself goes a step further, and I do think that there's many aspects that tells us that he is quite a free-thinking guy. In season 1, episode 3, at an event, Benedict looks at some artwork. He makes a critical comment about One Piece Lady Danbury, and then he finds out that the artist himself, Henry, was right next to her. In this moment, you see two things: his interest for art, but also his ability to be able to criticize it and to be honest about it rather than just looking at it and moving on. Let's talk about the most scandalous thing in the room, Benedict and his sexuality and his relationships, right? So like I said, Benedict is the more open one in his family about certain things, and especially in the Ton. And let's start with his first encounter with Henry, right? When they were looking at art together, and Benedict is criticizing the piece that Henry made. The fact that Benedict can be very much just open and criticize that art, I think, was very interesting to Henry, and I think it shows very much how Benedict is able to openly criticize something. Some other people in the Ton wouldn't be able to do that. They just kind of like hold their opinions and walk away slowly or kiss ass, but Benedict is very open about the fact that he just wasn't that much into the piece. And I can understand that in such a society, that's super refreshing to see. And I think it's one of the reasons that Henry is very open to invite him to his personal quarters later. But let's talk about their relationship, right? So Benedict and Henry meet at another event, and they talk about Benedict's own art, which is not present at the event, which surprised Henry, which shows, again, a little bit of the insecurity about his own art being shown, similar to Colin as well. Henry then invites Benedict to his studio, telling Benedict that he might like it. And when he arrived, well, there were some other things waiting for him, so to speak. But what I find interesting is that Benedict sits down and he continues painting and he begins to work. And he works still after everybody else has left the party, which shows you just how much truly my man is into his art. He also doesn't really take compliments about his own artistic value. I mean, Henry tells him and gives him a compliment about the artwork, and he just kind of brushes it off. But the fact that Benedict saw what he saw and still came back is quite interesting. I think the average person could have been put off by it, especially in the Ton, which shows you just the hints of how he is not necessarily deterred by anything that is out of the ordinary or out of the norms of society. But let's talk deeper about his other relationships. Genevieve Lacroix de Maurice and Benedict did have a relationship, which I kind of forgot about for a bit because I was more focused on his relationship with Tilly. But they did have a dalliance, and the thing I noticed is that the show is definitely gearing us up for how open Benedict is and how, most importantly, his attitude when it comes to class. A lot of the times he messes or he is involved with a lot of women that are from a different social standing or a different social class, but he doesn't disrespect them because of it. When he's with Madame Delacroix and Eloise suspects Delacroix of being Lady Whistledown, and he notices how she's behaving towards Delacroix, he immediately warns Eloise to not behave like that again. Rather than being ashamed or casting her aside, he does recognize the fact that she is an admirable woman. Similar attitude for Tessa, the girl that he gets involved with at the art school, and also for Tilly. He seems to have a lovely respect for these women, which is super refreshing in the world of Bridgerton where a lot of men don't. And I think the show has been giving us this to gear us up for the fact that he would be the most open one. So it would make sense for him and Sophie's relationship. I think something the show definitely wants us to explore or wants to explore is Benedict's reluctance for taking responsibility, right? In season 3, in episode 1, I find it interesting that in the episode, Anthony makes a comment about how Benedict will be handling the family's estate while Anthony's on his honeymoon. And in earlier seasons, the idea of responsibility really freaks Benedict out, but this time he actually is quite interested in it. And as Anthony praises his administrative talents, Benedict admits that he somewhat feels lost without the job. And I find it interesting saying that he's not doing his art thing anymore, but he instead states that he no longer felt like he had a purpose. And that's an interesting development for his character, in my personal opinion. I mean, this is the guy who was super afraid of the fact that Anthony might die in the duel. So I think the show has been gearing us up bit by bit to see him take responsibility. But even at the end of season 3, when it comes to dealing with a relationship, Benedict is not ready for not only the emotional weight of a relationship, but also a relationship that is perhaps outside what is the norm in the world of the taunt, especially being with a widow.
Since I met you, it's made me realize how good it feels to be free. You've opened my world, and I'm not ready to close it again just now.
The thing is, this could be interpreted in multiple ways. I first interpreted it as maybe in terms of his sexuality, but some people have also commented that maybe this is in terms of the fact that this is a lot of responsibility and he's just simply not ready for it, which is also something quite different. But I'm not too sure. For me, either way, I think what will be interesting in this upcoming season is how Benedict has to face responsibility and face his fears when it comes to commitment, and also face his fears when it comes to his own purpose in life. And I think Sophie, being a character that had no choice but to face hardships from a young age, would force him to also sort of look at himself in that regard. But I don't know. You guys let me know down in the comments. All in all, I'm very excited for Benedict's season, and I'm very interested in how Sophie and him are gonna work, because the book was quite messy. The book was very much like Benedict Bridgerton in the book deserves jail. But yeah, thank you guys so much for watching this video. You guys will be definitely getting more Bridgerton content from me, and I will also be yapping about Wicked next week because I'm going to go see it. So, but in the meantime, take care of yourselves, and I'll see you guys later. Okay, bye.